Hello, everyone. It's been a big 2025, and today I'm with our CEO, Bryan Smith, to talk through kind of what happened in 2025 and what we see going forward in 2026. Bryan, how are you?
Doing great. Appreciate it joining me today.
I think it's really hard to look back at 2025 and not talk about one of the bigger elements of the year, which was the Broadcom VMware continued changes that we've seen. We saw in 2024, that was a huge topic because of the shift just in that base licensing structure. So what do you think was the most disruptive? Was it that VMware Broadcom, the continued changes there, or was there something else that you saw?
I think the VMware piece was, one of the pieces, but I think there were really three core things that came together when you look at it in retrospect. That the VMware had an impact where it forced people to think about their core infrastructure that just worked for years.
Yep.
And to say, am I optimized correctly? Am I on the right platform? Should I be using a service provider? There's lots of questions that came up from there. There was also, on the hyperscale side, the runway bill started to catch up with people. So there was a pullback in spending and looking for a way to optimize some of the costs there. But then there's this realization that AI is a real thing and that it's going to change the way you think about infrastructure, how you design some of the different pieces. And so when we talk about it, kind of coalesce that it's this trilemma between the VMware impact, the hyperscale cost components, and the impact of AI.
And I think that's to me, some of the hyperscale and the VMware talk kind of comes together. Because I think some of the conversations people had was, well, we've got this little bit that's out in AWS, or we have this little bit that's out in Azure. The numbers didn't make sense before, but now they kind of do. Maybe we look into just moving everything over and just going with that. We've seen that as well from that cloud first mentality, right? I think that cloud first piece has always been hey, this is where we see everything going. Every board thinks that if they go to the cloud, it's going to make things faster, better, et cetera. But now we're starting to hear cloud rebalancing.
Right.
So what's that change? How does that change affect customers today? Because we're starting to hear that a lot more.
Yeah, I think it went from cloud first to cloud smart. And so cloud smart is right mode of cloud for the right reason. And the cloud rebalancing, I think, is a really good concept because you heard this concept of repatriation for a number of years, but you didn't see a big wave of that. And I think that the VMware component was part of what really made cloud rebalancing the right term, because it's looking at all of your workloads, no matter if it's things that are running on a hypervisor, things that are in a private cloud internally, things that are running out at the edge, or things that are in a hyperscale. And it's rebalancing all of those different workloads, and then when you layer the AI component as far as looking forward, it makes a lot of sense.
I think that pendulum shift that we've talked about over the years, I think it's kind of settling into, okay, where do things need to go? I think a lot of folks don't look at SaaS as part of the cloud story, but it really is. As Expedient, we don't have a ton of operational. We run a lot of our monitoring and everything internally, but we have Office 365 because we don't want to run Exchange threads anymore. It's that also, I think, played into this piece of software that's running in a VM right now. Can we just use the SaaS version and we don't have to patch and maintain this thing over and over again? What do we think started the push on rethinking that hyperscale strategy, though?
Well, I think that when you use the term cloud first, as I've heard a number of people refer to that now as overconfidence. And so there was this belief that everything was going to end up in hyperscale cloud. And that was really strong between especially 2018 to 2022. And then you saw the pendulum come back and you heard the term multi-cloud, which is we're going to use multiple hyperscalers to do that. But analogy I've heard is that's like 3 Toyota Camrys of different colors, very similar function. So when you peel back the different layers, there was this belief that if we go to a cloud operating model, and when they said those terms in hyperscale, that they would get all these different benefits. And but they got 30% of their applications in a true cloud operating model and then tried to lift and shift things that weren't designed for hyperscale cloud there. And so you ended up with runaway cost and a little bit of the concept of insanity, trying to do the same thing, but not getting the result. The result was this ever increasing bill, not a real change in their operations.
Oh, hey, welcome to the data center. Come on in.
One of the biggest highlights this year was stepping into our Pittsburgh data center with Ed DeZerko, our SVP of Data Center Engineering and Operations. He walked us through the cutting-edge security and reliability behind the racks that makes Expedient, well, Expedient. If you missed it and you want to learn more about the future of data center infrastructure or explore your co-location options with us, scan the QR code on screen now to watch the full tour.
So let's talk through some 2026 look forward, right? And I think the big thing that we're hearing a lot right now is there's a VMware contract cliff that's really coming this year in 2026 and 2027. Just general context for the viewer, all of the licensing changes were made at the end of 2024.
Right.
So you have a lot of organizations, 2023. So 2024 was when everybody had to start renewing on the new structure. So you're starting to see hey, we renewed in 2024. We'll figure it out later. Well, guess what? Just like we said in 2024, later will come faster than you think. So what should IT leaders be doing right now as part of a decision process? Like, what should they be thinking about right now? Because we're going into this sort of, okay, now you got to really do something about this.
And even before we get to that, I think it's important that there's different components to that contract cliff that you talk about, because one is the changes that happened to service providers. So VMware reduced their number of service providers by 99%. Expedient's in that 1% of the remaining. And a lot of the reason was they really wanted to have a complete platform that used the stack that could be competitive, for those workloads that don't make sense in a hyperscale, but give people that complete cloud operating model. So, that's one of the reasons that happened. But then you're right on the renewal for a lot of the other people. So a lot of the things that are happening right now is thinking about what decisions you make in what order so you don't paint yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
So that when you're looking at different platforms, and if that's VMware, if that's a Nutanix, if that's a hyperscale, all those are platforms now versus individual technologies and components. So thinking about what are the different things that you can do so you use the most capability of that platform. And that's how you're going to get the most simplified operations. That's how you're going to get the best cost structure and also get access to the most advanced features. So, when they're staging their different contracts and the things that they have to make decisions on, kind of lay all those out in order to make sure that you're not making a decision now for something that's not compatible later, or that's included in a platform and you end up double paying.
Yeah, and this is something we've talked about for years of there's not really a great time. I think that's also something for a lot of organizations. They want to wait till the perfect moment. And there is no perfect moment. That storm doesn't generally come around. You just bought hardware, but your licensing is coming up for renewal, or vice versa. You have old hardware that you need to replace today, or you need to do something about, but your licensing you're going to pay on for at least another year. It turns into this, it's not a technology decision.
Right.
It becomes much more of a business decision. And as all of that is going on, here comes AI. And I think this is the problem that a lot of organizations are running into, is that AI is now dominating the conversation inside the business. But we're also seeing this increase in the blast radius, because as AI is used in more places, we start to get into agentic workflows. When we start to see overall data accessibility problems, that has an impact on the business, not just the people doing things, but the agentic piece as well. How should people be rethinking their DR and potentially data protection strategies around AI?
Yeah, so let's hit that and then come back to methodology on how you actually solve for both. So on the blast radius, the core piece with AI centers around data. And so it's how you consume data, either in an autonomous way or directly, but getting access to more information faster, easier. And so as you start making more business decisions based on your data or having agents do things in that autonomous methodology, then the access to data really matters. Because think of those agents as a virtual employee.
Mm-hmm.
And in that type of situation, today, like if you have an outage in like an email platform or something goes down, employees still have other work and things that they can do. Or if a CRM goes down, they can do things manually and catch up. When you get into that autonomous process with agents, if you lose access to data, your workforce is essentially offline. They're not working. It's not like you have a manual process that you're going to do. So that value to data is ever increasing. So when you think of, and this is where I talked about earlier, is the infrastructure in the cloud layer starts to connect. So there's this cloud and data that people know today. There's AI in data, but it's really when you combine the three, from the infrastructure that you run on, it needs to be accessible. It needs to have resiliency. It needs to have ways to recover very quickly so that the things that you're leveraging AI for are working all times.
That story has played out for a lot of our clients who have come over to us for DR as a service in particular and said, hey, we used to do bubble tests. Now we're doing full failovers because we want to know that it works. And this is something that as AI becomes this huge driver from the business side, if you're an IT leader, this is an opportunity to lean on that need to get the things done that you've wanted to get done for a long time. Because I think a lot of organizations just said, can you just check the box? I don't need this to actually like super work. I just need you to make sure our cyber insurance doesn't charge us $1 million.
Right.
But now this becomes an actual impact to the business if you can't operate.
Disaster recovery was top of mind for many IT leaders this year. Our customer stories have given great insight into the Expedient experience, and we had a great conversation with John Krupnick at Byrider where we discussed their disaster recovery journey and the importance of people and process within tech.
The planning is the magic. I think also with the Expedient team, their pre-sales organization, their engineering team that helps you out.
If you're looking for more info on how Expedient helps you expand your DR capabilities, we have a great webinar coming up on January 20th with the entire IT leadership team at Brings Home Security. Yeah, you heard that right. The whole team. You can register now for our stream with the Brings Home Security team at this QR code. You can also start a conversation about your disaster recovery needs at expedient.com.
So what does that play into from that agentic system readiness? Like, I now have my agents. How do I make sure that my organization is ready to take that on? How does that infrastructure work around those agents, and how do you make sure that that works going forward?
Yeah, it starts thinking like a house or a building, that foundation. So having that foundation that's highly available, having the expertise to help pick the right pieces and parts. So you think of the speed that you could put up a prefab home versus something that you're building from scratch, or the same thing from like a car analogy. And so a lot of times a service provider can help you get to that outcome much faster and in a much more predictable manner, because they're curating those different technologies together. They know they interoperate. They know what good use cases look like, so they can help get you to that outcome much faster.
That is it's something we've talked about for literal decades, I think, at this point, of we do this all the time. Let's help you get there faster. And when we are able to bring our expertise to the table, we have found organization after organization go, oh, well, that was way easier than it could have been. So as we start talking about, as we go into AI and we hear about people saying, oh, well, we're building this thing, we're working on this AI thing, we've also heard the reports from MIT where 93% of DIY AI initiatives fail. And what is really behind that? Is that an infrastructure problem? Is that a data problem? Is that a people problem? Like, what's really landing there?
Well, MIT somewhat answered the question, because the report also says that so essentially 93% fail, so 7% are successful. 67% are successful if you use a service provider.
There's a number in front of the 7 there.
Yeah, so you're almost nearly a 10x difference if you use a service provider. And a lot of the pieces that come into that is both helping determine what is a good use case and what's the right size bite to take so you build momentum and trust in the business. And also, a service provider isn't figuring out the technology on as they go. Almost every end company right now is implementing AI for the first time. Service provider is likely implementing it for the 50, 100, 200, 300 time for different companies.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcomes are very consistent that people are looking for. So if you start with things that are fairly common core across different companies, those are things that can be implemented in weeks, not years. And then you can look at the things that are very unique and bespoke to your business. That may be a longer term project, but during that time period, you've gotten your data in a better order. Your teams understand how to use AI correctly for the right use cases.
And as we start to dive deeper into AI, it's not just ChatGPT.
Right.
I did see a report, though, that 92% of AI usage is ChatGPT. But when we look at this, it's not just LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just I asked a question and it gave me a response, or I had to generate me an image. It's I need to answer a question. I'm trying to solve a problem. It's going from step 2 to step 3. Okay, now I solved this part, then this. So what can drive that faster? What gives us the ability to not only roll out AI in weeks, but also bring the entire solution together?
Well, yeah, this is that framework I mentioned earlier, and it applies to cloud and AI. So when you think about it, we've realized that there's really 3 core phases that people have to go through. There's a stabilize, an optimize, and a modernize. And when you think about AI, stabilize is first getting rid of the biggest barriers of AI in a business. Security, number 1 barrier.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you solve for that? And second then is kind of the accessibility. And so you're getting it in front of your employees as well. So you're not limiting it to a small pool, which generally means that you need to get rid of the per user seat for large rollouts, so that you've now solved for security and cost barriers, because ROI is unknown at this stage, because that people are using it in their own life. As you said, ChatGPT, 93%. Yes, they're using it. So now they're using it in a secure manner. And then that optimized phase is how you connect it to their data. So now individuals can start doing more meaningful work using the data and doing their core function faster. But modernize is really the game changer, because modernize is the agentic workflows that you're talking about. So you're expanding your workforce by adding virtual workers and digital workers. So your managers are going to start managing as digital employees effectively and these different agents. And we see, from our own implementation and our clients, that an agent consumes about 9 times more AI consumption than chat, because it's essentially executing best practice at scale. Think if you could take your best employee in a certain task and have all the people that do that function operated in the same way. It becomes that superpower, and then you're leveraging the human capability and intelligence to do the creativity, to do a lot of the logic, and help interpret those pieces to just transform the business.
And that, I think, takes the level of intelligence up in an organization, because we have a lot of, everybody who's watching this right now has something in their job where they're like, I got to go do this thing, right? I have this process that I have to go through. I have this exercise I have to go through. And being able to take some of that off of their plate, because everybody is overwhelmed with all of the things that need to be done, giving them that opportunity to do that, I think, is kind of incredible. And when we see this, I see us taking AI and cloud together, right, and go forward. What do you see in 2026 going forward with cloud and AI really coming together there?
Yeah, we said 2025 was a lot of people figuring things out, and that was learning AI, what's a good use case, what's not, where does it fit? There's also, with some of the cloud and VMware pieces we talked about, of what's the right path. 2026 is a year of decisions. And, that AI is that lever to say, we need to get to that next place for the business. And with that, we need to rethink our infrastructure, how it interacts, how it works together. And a lot of that is going to start on the data side. So if you can have a data platform that's accessible for AI and also your core operations, you're not paying for it twice. And you can carry security that you have in data all the way through into AI as well. So there's just different things that you can think about and leverage that help really accelerate the business and the outcomes.
With AI rapidly evolving, we tackled the importance of AI resilience with Tom Cooper, the AI product lead here at Expedient. We also launched a Lunch and Learn series highlighting practical, real-world use cases, showing how to apply AI to boost productivity and empower your teams. To catch up on our AI content, you can see the full playlist here at this QR code and start the conversation about how you can bring AI into your enterprise securely and safely.
So I guess we can ask, it's the holiday season. I guess I could ask you a couple of questions here. If you could give a gift to every IT leader, what would that be? To make their job easier, to make their lives easier. That's where it brings.
Yeah, that's challenging. I think the if I had a magic wand, because it's more than a gift, a little different than a gift, but I would give them a free pass to look a year into the future.
Okay.
And so the way that I would do that as a gift is actually engaging and thinking about what are the products they want to have done at the end of 2026, and having conversations with service providers and others in their space that have already been there and done that. So giving them that free pass to not do the hard work and figure it all out on their own, and kind of hit the easy button to get to that outcome.
That free gift is available at expedient.com. Click Let's Talk. Sometimes we give gifts on this program. We can do that. One more question before we send everybody out to ask some live questions. What's one technology prediction for 2026 that you hope to be wrong about?
Yeah, the one I really want to be wrong is I think people are going to wait too long in making some of the decisions, especially related to their private cloud and the current VMware infrastructure that they have, and not prepare early enough and make decisions early enough as far as what's the way to optimize their platform go forward. And by waiting too long, you end up in a queue either for delivery, or you don't have enough enough time for your team to execute the appropriate changes, so that you really are in a position to take advantage of your environment today, but also be ready to really integrate that and leverage that for AI in the future.
And with that, we are going to send it to live Q&A. We will join you out there, and we'll see you in a second.
Appreciate it, AJ.
Thanks, Bryan.
Bryan, I'm here. Hi,
You.
everybody. This is it's a wonderful time of the year. I know a lot of people are starting to wind down, but we got a whole lot of questions in the pre-registration, and we as always, thank everybody for that. It's incredibly helpful. When you're submitting questions, it helps us make sure that the content that we put into the interviews, but also you get your questions answered here as well. Bryan, I believe we're going to start right up here at the top. And the first one was AI, values, benefits, pitfalls. A very exact question to start with here.
Yep.
Kind of what do you see here?
I'll give you my take, and feel free to give your view. So when I think of the quick value of AI, that low-hanging fruit is how much it accelerates the first draft and that first cut to get a project started. Because one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from a CIO of a major university was, when getting into a project, just start. You can't just wait and plan forever. So it's been a huge accelerator for that. When I think of the benefits, and I think we touched on it during the discussion, but it's the ability to take and execute best practice at scale. So you can take your best employee and essentially multiply those capabilities overall. And the pitfalls, I think are where people want to be focused right now. It's the amount of shadow AI that's happening inside of a business, because it's now that the average person is using more than 3 different personal AI tools. And then also that ties to AI sprawl. with so many different companies having point solutions that AI is now you get AI washed is a term I've heard a lot of places where you have 20 different point solutions, but they're not actually interacting together as one common system.
Yeah, and that is a very similar story to what we've seen on the cloud and IT side traditionally. I have 15 different point solutions, but none of them really talk to each other. This team has this monitoring tool and this team has this monitoring tool, but they don't talk to each other, so they don't know that this side is actually the problem versus the other. I think one of the other things I see around AI usage right now is in particular just, well, this was the answer. There's no additional like human element to it. Double checking it, making sure that that's right. Every single day, there's some new image that's been generated, some new response that's generated of none of this is right. The one I saw today was the last 25 World Series champions, and the logos just start to melt. And there's the St. Louis Reds. Like these are the sorts of things where it's just double check your work, because there are people who expect this to be human generated and then catch that it is AI generated. So those are the sorts of things. Use it to get that first draft. I cannot tell you, as somebody who has ADHD in a very real way, that first draft or that first hurdle is the hardest part of getting started, and just letting it take that first swing. It goes, okay, now I can start to edit and pull things from that. But just getting over that hurdle of, I need to get this thing started is huge. And so that's one of my biggest use cases. I think we can go to the next question. Sales and objection handling techniques. For those of you who are Expedient employees, we have a wonderful sales enablement program. But Bryan, you've been in sales for a very long time. And I think this is interesting in terms of how to handle in the process, especially for some of you who are thinking this is just like how to sell things. You as a person inside of a company, kind of, if you have an idea, you have to sell that idea up. If you want to get your idea through, a lot of times when I'm coming up with how to handle an objection, I'm trying to think about all the reasons someone would say no. Why would they say no to this? Is it cost? Is it time? Is it priority? All of those things. How do you position this in a way to handle those expected no's? Because that's the hardest part of all. You know that you're going to get objections. Somebody wants to say no. It's so easy to say no. So how do you handle that when it comes to, hey, how are we going to pay for this? Well, this thing that we're using over here, we don't really use this. This is a cost savings. We can maybe shut this thing down, or this is going to free up time, or all of those things that come into play around making sure that you want to get your idea through because it's going to be beneficial. But Bryan, I'm sure you have a million ideas here.
Yeah, this wasn't a clear question, so I wasn't exactly sure which path people are going to go. So I'll take some liberty. One of the use cases I would say with AI is people can use it to do role play. That if they're going to be meeting with XYZ company, or if they're going to be meeting with me, they could effectively say that they're meeting with me, who the company is, and what they're trying to communicate, and ask it to role play, throw objections. And it's surprisingly good using other content that I've put out there, things that I've said to then leverage for a seller along the way. So from an AI perspective, that's one of the things I would think from sales and objection handling. And more broadly, I would really think about how the buyer has changed and the size of the buyer group has changed, and who are the different people at the seat that may not have been there previously.
And I think that's actually a really great way to go into the next question here, which is what is the simplest way to integrate AI into workflows? For me, it has always been, what part of this task, how well do I know this workflow? Let's start there. Because if you're just going to try and inject a tool of any kind, whether it's AI or any other tool, how well do you know that process? Do you know what the edge cases are? And a lot of those become how integrating that in means what piece of this is going to be the most straightforward, so that I don't have to write a huge amount of context for it to understand, okay, well, when you see this, then do this. And then all of that turns into, hey, how do I give people better information and better context up front? One of the workflows that I actually find fascinating is open enrollment season. We just went through it here. I'm sure a lot of you just went through this. It's the end of the year. That's kind of how this is the season for that, not just the Christmas season, but the open enrollment season. How do I consolidate and consume all of this information simply? And how do I make the right decisions? How do I put that information into a place where this workflow that would traditionally be employee has a question, they ask HR person thinks about it for a little bit based on the information that they know, and then provides a response. How can I leverage that and say, hey, before you ask HR directly, try using this, custom GPT that can read through all these documents, provide summaries, and then say, hey, based on what you're asking me, this is probably the best answer. If you want to dive deeper into the details, please contact HR. That actually saves like 80% of the questions that the HR team gets during those time periods when they're getting a lot of people through the process, making sure that everybody's done.
Mhm.
So consider what is going to be the simplest point to help people get faster answers, or how are they going to get faster results? And then that is usually where it's the simplest point to do it. You also don't have to boil the ocean. Do it in little increments.
Yep.
Do it a little bit here and a little bit there. But Bryan, I'll let you go forward here.
Yeah, I think those are good. A couple additions would be one, I find it really effective to understand and just acknowledge I don't have all the answers. And so when I'm going down that path, get the different stakeholders on a quick call and record it and kind of debate through what are the different things, what is the order, what are the gotchas, and then taking that transcription and then generating a workflow from that you get a lot further on that first draft by doing that. And the second, and you touch on this a little, is breaking it into smaller pieces, so that look at a workflow and what are components that are likely to be going to be reused for other things. And that could be like a lookup or an authentication, and building it in a modular way so you can snap it together like Legos so you get better value. So each time you're doing that, it accelerates the next workflow and the next one.
Let's go on to the next question. And this one is going to be a very fun one. What are the benefits of switching from VMware to Nutanix? I feel like we're in a unique position to answer this question. We were VMware service provider, VCF service provider of the year, and also Nutanix's service provider of the year. We got those in basically like a week apart from each other. The big benefit that I see a lot of people looking at when they're switching from VMware to Nutanix is a little bit of peace of mind in the current ecosystem. A lot of people have some nerves about that, and being able to remove those nerves is beneficial. It also allows you to do some focusing on longer term projects versus this, very tactical financial implication. However, that doesn't mean that that's the only benefit that you're getting from the Nutanix side. I think the benefit that you're getting on the VMware side is right now they're moving towards a more integrated ecosystem between all of the Cloud Foundation components. One of the benefits that you're getting there is a more consolidated platform, which is what Nutanix has offered for a very long time. So for me, the big benefit is this something that you want to make a choice on? And is this something you would have made a choice on prior to the acquisition? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is not really. But now there is a much bigger lever to pull on. And so I think that's where the benefit becomes, how do I, kind of smooth out everything?
Yeah, I would challenge this question, to be honest, and probably approach it from a different angle, because I think it's less about switching, and it's more about how do I select the right platform for my workload. Because if you start the conversation with switching, you're making the assumption that the VMware platform isn't good for your workload, and we see that's in a lot of cases it's a great platform for those workloads. There's other clients that a different hypervisor is going to be really good for those use cases. And I think that the better question is, or the value that's come out of some of the changes with VMware and Broadcom, is it's really created a situation, an opportunity for companies to look at those workloads that just ran their business and how do we optimize that? They were focusing on the cloud first components and how they could take certain applications to cloud or cloud native. And there wasn't enough conversation on how they optimize and modernize some of the rest of the platform. So that's where I think the right discussion should be. And then it's about picking which platform aligns best, because I think also people have this false narrative that VMware has to be more expensive because of the changes. And we've actually seen the opposite. If you're using that entire stack, if you're using Nutanix or if you're using VMware, both are great platforms that are going to give you great reliability. And it's not necessarily, doesn't need to be a cost conversation. It should be more about what are you trying to do? What are you trying to integrate with? What path are you going and which platform supports that best?
And that is I think that's been the biggest thing overall. In fact, I remember when the announcement was first made, basically anybody who's using more than just vSphere was actually going to save money, which was true. I did the math. I have purchased VMware licensing throughout my career, and I know those prices. And yeah, it's true. But there's also an angle of a lot of people didn't have more than one. So I think some of this feeling is still there of like, hey, I got to do something about this. And I think it comes down to, is this still the right platform for you? And the answer is probably yes. So this might be a way to say, hey, we're recommitting into this, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to switch just because somebody pulled a lever on a license. Let's move to the next question. What are your biggest initiatives going into 2026? And Bryan, I'll take this to you. You are our CEO.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a lot of these during the conversation that inside of Expedient, definitely some of those are going to be very similar to other organizations, such as how we get outcomes from AI. It can't just be we're using AI for the sake of it, but what is the actual benefit we're getting from a client experience, from the different efficiency gains. And other initiative is really as we evolve the company from being one of the best cloud service providers in the country, adding the AI layer really transforms it to this intelligent infrastructure concept. And that is where you have the cloud, data, and AI all together. So there's going to be a lot of work that goes into that, but I think it really puts us in a position where we can give our clients a really unique solution.
And that, I think, is really where we're trying to put the two sides together. And I look at it a little bit more tactically in terms of, if you are trying to focus on the AI portion of the business, but you are still also tasked with keeping the lights on, this is where we can help you get out of that, necessary task that you have to do and still do it well, but allow you to take that time and focus it elsewhere. And that is something that very few companies can offer right now, especially the ones that are just direct AI only as their only thing. This is where we help you just at a much wider level in terms of how to actually rotate the strategy into a position where you can move forward in the right path and have the success that you want. Bryan, it's the sixth question, but what's the best first question to ask?
I think my best first question is, what does perfect look like in a situation, and what stands between me and getting to 80% of perfect?
Okay.
Because if I can get to 80%, it normally takes me, as 20% of the effort, but I get the majority of the benefit. So yeah, I often use that a lot to understand where somebody's head's at, where they're trying to go, and what they see the gaps to be.
My first question is always why. Why do you want to do whatever it is that you want to do? What is the driving force behind that? Understanding the why helps understand what comes after that. If your problem is, we can't scale, why do you want to do this? Because we can't scale fast enough. Okay, then buying hardware is probably not a good idea for you, because you will not be able to keep up with the amount of hardware you need to buy and the speed at which you need to buy that. If it's why do we want to move out of our own data center? Because our roof is leaking. Well, that's a pretty good why, and you should be moving into a place that has a roof that doesn't leak and has better, overall environmentals. Those whys help set the reasons for doing something, and also understanding the pain of what happens if you don't. And that question has always been a winner for me, because it allows me to get really down to the nitty gritty with somebody very quickly. We'll go to the next question here. This one, what is the expected direct impact of the NAND price increase on our storage costs for the next 12 to 24 months? And what is your plan to mitigate this? Generically, by the way, this is not just NAND price increases. We're seeing this on component increases. We're seeing this on, obviously, we saw a bunch of licensing increases and those sorts of things. What we do for our clients is we help blend out a lot of those cost increases. when we did the Broadcom changes and we had to move over to the VCF licensing, which we had to do prior to basically everybody. We were able to pass on, I think it was a 4% total cost increase to our enterprise cloud clients, and our, I think it's 17% on our private cloud instances. And that's just the nature of shared environment versus dedicated environments. But those are the things that we are able to do at a scale that most individual companies can't. When I'm buying storage, I'm not just buying it for you, not you, Bryan, but you, the viewer. We're buying it for you and them and them and them, and we're able to spread that cost out. We look at the same thing with licensing. We're able to buy licensing at a much larger amount and at a larger volume than most companies can. So we're able to help blend those costs away. Are there probably going to be price increases at some point? Yeah. But at the same time, we're trying to mitigate those as much as possible because we don't want to pass those costs on to you, right? Bryan doesn't like sending out emails that say, hey, sorry, there's going to be a price increase coming. We don't like doing that. But we're going to take every opportunity we can to optimize our spend, optimize the way we handle storage, optimize our purchasing as well. We actually saw this when the tariffs started going out. A lot of servers are not made here in the US. So we made some purchases prior to those tariffs going out to make sure that we had hardware on hand so that we didn't have to pass on those price increases to you. So we do make a number of decisions to try and mitigate any sort of cost increase because we don't want to pass it on any more than we want to take them on. Bryan, do you have anything to add there?
I think that's good. And for those that aren't familiar, a lot of this is driven from a combination of a few incredibly large orders, where people are pre-buying almost a year in advance of what they think the capacity is, and also one of the larger memory suppliers moving out of the space to move into different areas. Both of those are driving some of this shortage that in turn drives a increase in cost for a period of time until supply catches up. So, the experts, and they vary between 15 and 25% difference in cost for some of those memory components and storage components. And like AJ said, we've pre-purchased a good amount of inventory. So one of the best things people can do is not wait and take advantage of the capacity and things that are on the shelf that were purchased before any changes were made, so you can lock in a better overall cost structure.
Let's take it to the next question. Bryan, I think this is a really sort of strategic answer, but what is the most important foundation block to be sure is in place and up to date before implementing AI to a company?
Yeah, I think there's two main. So when I hear that question, I think about before implementing AI really at scale, or from some of the automation and the agentic pieces, which is where you get the most significant portion of value. So the things I think you need to do first are, one, put a security wrapper around all of the AI consumption and giving all of your employees access to a secure AI chat capability. So that way you've eliminated the shadow AI is number one. And then once that's done, most of my focus would turn to data accessibility, governance, readiness, so that you can think about how you access where data is today, determine how good it is, how it reacts when you're testing, and then determining what things you should access data in place, like through a current SaaS, versus what things you should make as a data pipeline and move into AI specific storage. And then you can think of use cases and build systematically and incrementally. Don't wait until this panacea where all my data is perfect before I start consuming. Take little steps and get value along the way.
I think the other important foundation is like thinking about what is the use case you currently want to solve. Because I think there's obviously going to be more and more and more as you start to see that success, but like, what are you trying to do today? What is the pain point that you think AI is going to solve for you, and understand what is needed right now to solve that problem with people. So if it's, I want to answer more calls, I want to I want to get questions to or answers to my end users faster. What is necessary to do that today without AI? And then understand what will be needed to make that possible on the AI side. So I think understanding your base need up front helps to set that foundation Also, to Brian's point, then you start to build the overall actual AI foundation of how do I make sure that it's secure? How do I make sure that we're using it appropriately? How do I make sure that my data is connected securely? All those things build up on top of that. But I think a lot of times people kind of jump the gun and they go, okay, well, here's a tool. Okay, well, you walked into Home Depot with a screwdriver and then you wondered what else you could do with it. So, sure, that's a thing, but it's not what you really bought the screwdriver for. You bought the screwdriver to hang things on a wall or put things together, and not necessarily just wave it around and say that every problem needs a screwdriver. That's how you end up with a hole in your TV. And finally, we have one more question here. With hybrid and private cloud adoption accelerating, what are the top hypervisor security challenges your clients are facing, and how is Expedient helping them to protect these critical environments? I think the base security challenge that most customers face, and they don't recognize it as a security challenge, is keeping the platform up to date, keeping things patched. When vulnerabilities come out, how long does it take you to patch those things? I cannot tell you how many environments I've seen where the version starts with a 6, the version starts with a 7.0, and that there's no update on it. It is, a lot of people put it into place and then they don't touch it anymore because they don't think they have to, or they very rarely touch it because they don't want to break anything. We patch all of our environments on a regular basis. And so when clients are on our platforms, whether that's VMware, Nutanix, Cohesity, Zura, whatever those things may be, our job is to make sure that they are patched and up to date. Our job is to make sure that they are taken care of. So for us, we are focused deeply on how to make that work, and also to limit the amount of downtime, if any, that a client would see as part of that update. So moving hosts around, moving resources around, when we need to do major upgrades, like we've been doing with EEC1 to EEC2, it's bringing in whole new clusters to move clients into so that we can move things around, which are not things that most clients are going to do for themselves. So this is where we are taking a lot of the time, because it is our job to build and maintain infrastructure. That's what we do. And for a lot of organizations, it's not the core competency. And so we're trying to help do things at scale, at best practice, and give you that time back to focus on those things. And Brian, I'll let you close it out here.
Yeah, that was great. The thing I would add to it is also, don't build a snowflake. So many companies try to build their own and think that it's different. And people are looking for reliable compute, storage, and security, so that using the full capabilities of a platform, if it's VMware, if it's Nutanix, or a service provider like Expedient, of using that prescriptive stack, all of those are ways to actually close a lot of the security holes at the onset, because it's a prescriptive stack that's already been pre-configured to work and operate together.
And with that, I want to thank everybody for all of their time today. Brian, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Sure. It's been a wonderful 2025. We have a lot more to come in 2026. You're not going to want to miss it. We already mentioned earlier the interview that we did with Brings Home Security. Is a great conversation about how to solve problems with some creative outcomes. And I think you're not going to want to miss that one. We have so much more stuff coming early next year. Stay tuned, and we will see you then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.